Okay, so you want to start by talking about what, BRC20? Should we talk about runes first, or should we dive into the other things first?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, there's a ton going on with both. Most of the action, I think, is on the runes side right now. Um, what we were just talking about before we started the podcast was the fact that, we had been monitoring all these projects. And, we had, in our last podcast, we had talked a little bit about like Runestone and Dog, and we were pretty critical of it, frankly. And I have to say, like, watching the rollout, I don't actually think Dog did that bad of a job of rolling it out. They got their ticker right away. They like went right to the market. They dropped the tokens. I thought the whole panhandling thing for the fees was kind of odd, but the fact is they like executed and they actually got the tokens into people's hands. I have to say, like, I think that the pups launch has been one of the worst in ordinals. Like, it's almost hard to believe, like, how much like momentum they had at their back to be the leading meme coin in ordinals. And it just feels like they just blew the lead. And I'm not saying they won't like get it back somehow, because it's clearly like a smart group of people behind it, but like, what do you think, Isabel? Like, what the hell happened there?
Well, I'm curious. So did they just transition? Did they just like basically make it such that you can transition BRC20s to Pups runes? Is that what happened? I'm actually not completely filled in.
I don't believe you can even do that yet.
I think that's what I saw Farmer Joe say, that I think I think he just said you're like, today is the day that you'll be able to do that, maybe.
So
I'm not.
let's just talk it through, though. So, like,
Yeah,
let's say that was a week ago that they enabled that. From my
right.
perspective, that would still be like really late.
Yeah, it's late.
Like,
It's
what are they doing? Like the hype around the launch of runes, like we all had predicted, we'd all discussed. Every good trader that I know sort of was of the impression that there was going to be a lot of hype around runes and that it was going to dump at the outset, and that there could be some FOMO right at the launch that you should try to at least take advantage of.
yeah.
Dog took advantage of it. RSIC took advantage of it. Pups literally just ceded all that ground. And I just don't get why.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, like, obviously, I mean, like, I mean, they have a pretty competent team. Yeah, I'm not totally sure what happened there.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts about like art, like runes in general, and sort of how the runes launch is going, and how runes tokens, even potentially like the top 10, are kind of playing out?
Yeah. So I'm looking at the top 10 right now. And basically what you've seen a number of like tickers sort of like bounce around in the top five, top three. But for the most part, the two that are remaining like in the top of the volume chart is Dog and RSIC. If you actually like look at like volume on OKX and compare that to the volume on these decentralized exchanges, I mean, it's not even close. RSIC is like, hundreds and hundreds of millions a day. Some days it's $1 billion of volume. Whereas, Dog in the last 24 hours on Unisat is 1.5 Bitcoin. So the vast majority of the liquidity right now in runes is frankly RSIC. It's just not on the decentralized exchanges.
Where is it trading right now? Where are R6 trading at the moment?
OKX.
No, 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 no. I mean, at what price are they trading?
Oh, R6 are trading at like 1 cent again,
I mean,
$1.1.
do you think that those are a buy right now? Would you
Um,
acquire this price? We
yeah, I mean,
already have
honestly, I
like a
do.
bag, right? So like the fund doesn't really need to buy more R6 just because we went in with such a big position that was, I mean, essentially a free position that we were airdropped. But like if you were not in that situation, would you be buying R6 right now?
So RSIC, um, it's like a $232 million market cap right now at this price.
Okay.
If I didn't have an RSIC position, I would be buying here. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I do. I still think there's so much like, and I'm not like in a position where we have any special information or Like and I don't want to necessarily encourage people to speculate on these things, but like there is a lot of speculation around RSIC and what season two could mean, and the way that the team has handled themselves in regards to the rest of the runes ecosystem. And the basic argument that I've heard is essentially that if they really wanted to make a bunch of announcements and pump their coin and suck all of the liquidity out of every other runes project, they could probably do that in like very, very quickly. The fact that they've chosen not to, I think, indicates a longer term, like uh
Like game plan.
yeah, there's something cooking there. And I have a feeling that whatever it is, it's so big that it relies on the success of runes overall and not just one token. So they're not trying to suck the liquidity out of Dog, which frankly, Dog is doing everything they can to suck the liquidity out of RSIC. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting dynamic right now to watch play out. And if it were me and I were in that position, and if I were behaving that way, the reason I would be behaving that way would be because I would be concerned about the long-term health of the ecosystem.
That makes sense. I mean, do you think that there's any threat to the long-term health of the ecosystem?
No, not really a threat, but like I do think that when one coin corners the market, it's just not healthy. Or like when supply is concentrated with one group, it's not healthy. And those things tend to lead to dumps.
Do you think that that is potentially a situation that was faced by BRC20?
BRC20. So the thing with BRC20 is I don't think that necessarily happened because I think that it was um it was more organically minted. So I think the people that got those tokens got them by working for them.
But you don't think that like Ordi dominance is like necessarily like poses like a risk to BRC20? I mean, to
Oh, I
be,
see what you're saying. I get what
yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying. Does already dominance. So it's I guess the no, I don't think it really does. That's a really good point. And I think that I should mention the distinction and like sort of where I was going with the RSIC thing, because I think my thought process there and what I think other people have speculated on too is that um RSIC could be building like the decks of runes.
Oh,
And
really?
and if that's the case, then like the health of other assets and how much volume they get from trading would potentially matter to them more than it might matter to you on the BRC20 side if you're Ordi, if that makes sense.
Where did you hear this? I haven't heard this, that RSIC is potentially building a DEX that they're trying to get. You think that the team is trying to get in on the infra side?
So they had inscribed a list of tokens that they were like going to inscribe as runes on the test net that basically some people believe showed their hand, that their view is that RSIC will include potentially hundreds of tokens.
But these would be like other people's tokens, or you're saying there will be hundreds of RSIC specific tokens that that team will deploy?
So I think it's unclear. I think it could be both.
Interesting. Okay. So they're gonna build like an entire mini trading ecosystem, like in and of themselves, essentially. That's sort of potentially one of the plans.
So one of the more interesting speculations, in my view, is that they could be building a DEX, excuse me, and that the DEX fees accrue to the owners of RSIC.
Interesting. That would be interesting. Yeah, because in my mind, I was thinking like, doesn't that seem, if they're gonna build like a whole ecosystem with tons and tons of tokens, wouldn't that be like dilution potentially to RSIC?
So I think they want a trading. I think they want to be like Uniswap potentially. I think that that's the vision of what they could theoretically want to be. And if that is what they want to be, that's extremely exciting.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Anything else on the rune side that you think is like interesting right now? I mean, it's funny. I was chatting. Well, I mean, generally speaking, I feel like runes are kind of dead right now. I mean, ordinals are dead right now too, right? Everything's kind of down. I'm curious, like, I'm like, okay, is this like an opportunity to be buying all of these like 10 meme coins, basically? Like, kind of just like slowly accumulate, the Satoshi Nakamotos and the Wanko Mankos and the dogs and whatever. Or, maybe there are just a couple of those, right? Like, pick your favorites kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, I mean, my view on that is like, for the most part, for the fund, um, like we're going to stay away from the meme coins just because it's hard to have like a whole lot of conviction behind a particular meme coin trade. In my opinion, I'm sure there are some people out there that have a lot of conviction about meme coins. Um, but like from like a strategic, trading point of view, I
Even in
think.
the top 10, you would say, like even in those like top 10, like those top 10 meme coins, those would be too tricky. Is it just because like the volume's too low right now to like make a bet about whether or not any of them will get picked up?
So I think the main problem, and I would have to go through them one by one again because I've done this already. My main issue, from what I can tell with the majority of these, and that includes like Fihu, which is the number one, and
Right.
this includes like Satoshi Nakamoto, and this especially includes Epic, which we should talk about. Epic, Epic, Epic.
Yeah.
It's the concern is just like the team like allocations and the pre-mint distributions, and like if they get anything valuable, the team has so much of it that if they dump in a non delicate way, they will destroy their market, which we've seen most projects in crypto unable to resist doing
It seems
historically.
likely though. Let's talk about Epic, 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 because that seems like a really good example of like, it seems very likely to me, right? What they're planning on doing is airdropping them. And airdrops, I mean, seems to be like the alpha groups that we're a part of. We're hearing a lot of this in the chats right now that airdrops, the reason why people are pre-mining these tokens to airdrop them is because airdrops are largely seen as better distribution mechanisms than free mints, because you can, pick the types of community holders that you want. You can basically like choose distributions amongst, collections that are already like popular and like excited, getting lots of attention. You don't have to, you can basically pick communities that are already like distributed well. Like Puppets, for instance, has great distribution. Like, why wouldn't you just like plop your tokens into the distributed wallets of Puppets holders, right?
Yeah. Um, so I do think that that could happen. The thing is like it's and like the extent to which that happens will be really important and relevant. Like if they
You have to wait and
so
see.
they allowed you to publicly mint. So we're talking right now about Epic, 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 Epic. And let's just like very quickly go back on the history there so people know. Um, the first Epic sat that was ever sold traded hands recently in an auction for 33 Bitcoin. And the buyer of it etched a rune called Epic, 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 Epic on that sat, and um, allowed the public to mint 5% of that, and 95% of that was um, uh, put into the treasury or supply of whoever etched it. We don't know exactly what their plans are yet.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about.
By the way, I believe that that was pre-mined by the Blob team.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes sense because I was like, why is Blob pumping so hard right now? Like Blob has been like pumping since Epic was etched. And I was like, what's going on? It's like, oh, they were the team that's actually making this happen. So they're
And
gonna,
we've heard, yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is that, you and I, obviously we talk to a lot of people and we've heard, I think you and I have heard the same whispers that the plan is to airdrop these
Right.
to important communities within the Ordinals ecosystem. Blob being the one that we know for sure they're going to airdrop to because it's their own project, which is why it pumped.
Yep.
Um, but that said, so I guess like let me circle back to my concern that I was talking about before. I think this is a really good topic. I appreciate your thoughts on this a lot. So like my view is that these guys they have to make back a lot of money. They have to make back 33 Bitcoin. They have to make back $2 million now that they've invested in this. So they
Mhm.
have a huge amount of risk on the table, a huge matzo ball, if you will.
Yeah,
So like if they just airdrop this, then their only way, so then what would that look like, Isabel? Their only way of recovering $2 million would be that they airdrop themselves a disproportionate supply of it, right?
yeah,
So then that would mean that they have a disproportionate supply to dump. That would be a concern.
right.
And why wouldn't they? And it's not like I'm accusing these guys of being dumpers or pump and dumpers or anything like that.
I
They're,
actually
they're
know the
just
team.
businessmen.
But it's interesting you say that because it's so funny because I know, so the guy, so do you know Neuro, from Neuropunks? You know the Neuropunks project?
I've heard of it, yeah.
I have to get more information from him. I have to chat with him, but I'm pretty sure he's one of the founders of Blob slash was like, he's one of the leaders of this situation. And this is me just like chatting about his character. Like, as far as I can tell, he's also a letters collector. He's also a Bitcoin letters collector. He is a person who loves ordinals and wants to do cool shit, clearly has like some liquidity on hand. My impression of him is he just wants to do something epic, I mean, like, for lack of a better word, this is my impression of him. Like, when I found out that it was him who bought this, I was like, yeah, obviously they're gonna try to make money. I don't think no one like sinks $2 million for no reason. But he strikes me as the type of person who's willing to make a big risky bet on something just because it's fun and cool and it's like legacy style. That's my impression. I could be wrong, but that's my impression of him.
Yeah.
Um, so, and like to spend, because you're right, it's a huge, I mean, we thought about potentially doing some sort of like rune play on and, bidding on the Epic. Obviously, this was not the only team that thought about doing this. I don't think we would have put down 33 Bitcoin because that would have
Oh,
been way too risky. In order to put 33 Bitcoin on a play like that, you have to be the type of person and the type of team that's willing to take a loss, I think, just to like
I,
do something cool.
I agree. And not only that, but like you have, based on the way that I agree with you completely, Isabel, and the way that like rares and uncommons and sats have been trading so far this cycle, for us to take a $2 million bet on something like that would have really not made any sense.
Yeah.
Like the only way that we could have bought something like that is if we felt like we were getting a really great deal on it. Like when we bought like when we bought the rare at Sotheby's for $114,000, we thought that was like a really good deal.
Right. So I'm just putting it out there that it's like there's something to be said for like, of course, these are like businessmen trying to like make money. But I do think that there's like a type of team, right? Like this is a team that's like loves to throw parties at conferences and like they're renting a big event space in San Francisco. And like this is a team that might fall into the category of being willing to spend a little bit of money to like do something like epic and like legacy worthy, and they might have the liquidity to warrant that, right? Like there might be like a character thing happening where like they're a little bit more willing to take on the risk.
I love that, and that's amazing. The other like interesting element of it, which I guess mitigates their risk to some degree, not entirely, is that if this whole thing fails, they'll end up with an epic sat that is etched, but it's still an epic sat that they can sell. It's
Exactly.
it's
I
not like this
thought that
epic
they
is
would have
going
burned
away.
it. I was like in my mind thinking like, oh, like the real way to tokenize this would be to burn the epic and create the runes when you burn it. That's the way to actually fractionalize an epic. That would have been like if you really wanted to be legit about fractionalizing that epic stat, you'd have to burn it. Right? I mean,
Totally.
yeah.
Or you
So
burn it or you put it in a multi-sig that has like a tremendous amount of credibility with a huge amount of signers, you know?
yeah, and even then, like I feel like the only way to like really like claim I mean, it doesn't really constitute, I mean, the way they did it doesn't really constitute a fractionalized epic sat. It's more just like a meme of like, this is a rune that we can create on this sat that no one else can. But to your point, they're
Totally.
still holding the value of the epic. I mean, They're not distributing the liquidity yet.
And so to your, and I love this conversation because like I think it's super interesting. People have talked a lot about like this being like burning stuff as a way to fractionalize something.
Yeah.
And like, so I think like very quickly on that topic, if that's okay. So I think Casey's approach to that, which was teleburn, that you
Mm.
burn it to a specific address that's generated from the Bitcoin address, which then relates it to the asset on Bitcoin in some way. There's like a digital connection there. And it's
Yep.
to me, it's super interesting. I've always struggled, and the market might, pass me by on this one, and I might just be wrong, but I've always really struggled with the idea of fractionalizing something by destroying it. That's just not how it's done. That's not how
But
we do it in the real world. And like the idea that that's going to be how we like sort of settle on doing it in the digital world, I'm just skeptical of that.
but the whole point of it is like to maintain provable scarcity, right?
A
Like if
hundred
the
percent.
value of the epic is, if the epic still exists and is transactable, then like that's 33 Bitcoin right there. Unless, I mean, another question that we could speculate on is the fact that they put this rune on it, does that devalue the actual epic sat?
I
Does
think
that
it
make it,
does. I think it
I
for sure
tend
does.
to agree on a long enough time horizon, it will, right? Like there will be my point of view, and I think we're on the same page here, is that virgin epics, rares, etc., will trade at a premium in the long run, right? Because
I agree.
people are going to want to have, you know, like blank canvases to do this kind of shit on. Um,
Yeah,
you
it's
can,
just not as cool to like paper over somebody else's canvas than it is to create your own from scratch. It's just there's something about that. And I do think also we've talked about this as well, like commoners, that was the first collection, that a 10K collection on uncommons. Well, that itself is sort of historic and interesting. So that may command a premium on top of the set. But overall, when you're talking about the fifth or the sixth or the 50th or the 100th uncommon 10K collection, it's like, who the fuck cares?
yeah. Do you think that the epic rune people, do you think that sat, I mean, that, I don't think that sat will trade at a premium the way commoners will. I mean, I just don't see that happen, especially as commoners are so, there's so many of them. Do you know what I mean? Excuse me, not commoners, uncommons in general. Like it's a totally different situation. Like there's just plenty of uncommons. Like the market for uncommons is such that it kind of makes sense that if you created like a really cool collection on top, it could trade at a premium, but I just don't see that happening with rares and epics.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that the like the liquidity dynamic for epics is like really interesting and unique. And like, so one just sold that was mined. One was just found by a Binance Sat
Do we know
Hunter.
who found it? Do we know anything about the person? We just know that it was found.
We know that it was found, and we know that it was found by a wallet that was
Segmenting.
um yeah, like doing 50 Bitcoin tranches constantly to Binance. And there's even a
It's
chance
like
like
one of the largest sat hunters in the world found this epic.
a very large Sat Hunter found this epic, yeah.
Um,
And so that there's that, and we don't know what that Sat Hunter is going to do. They might hold it, they might try to
it was
sell it.
likely in China, no? I mean, it was
It's
likely
likely in China. I mean, that's
likely
the
in China.
or Singapore,
Right.
Hong Kong, China. Yeah, is probably the likelihood, and it could be Dan. I mean, it could. I mean, like I don't want to drop names, but I mean, I know for example, like and we can bleep him out, but like DZ, I'm almost certain that he hunts internationally. I think Robert Clark hunts internationally. And if there was an epic in a Binance wallet, I'm sure that's where they would focus their energy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
and
Um,
really the biggest thing for me is like, what a fuck up from Binance's point of view. Like, geez, like
for not sequestering it themselves, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah, but this gets back to what we've spoken about, which is that they have probably made the intentional decision not to sequester, to not be sat hunting themselves, right?
I mean, that is what we've heard talking to our, I mean, that's what I've heard. That's what you've heard. That's what our partners have heard talking to our friends that work at the American exchanges, but the reality is I don't actually know what the dynamic is with the more international ones like Binance.
Right. For American exchanges, it kind of makes sense that, centralized exchanges are not going to like take the regulatory risks associated with like making money off of their depositors in that way. But yeah, I mean, you would think that like international exchanges, a little more whatever about it. Yeah.
Totally. Like it's like they don't even have a headquarters. Like they should have totally segmented that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, so long story short, Epic, Epic, Epic. I think Epic, 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 Epic was like basically founded by some, kind of ordinal party boys with some liquidity on hand. That's my impression of the situation. For like some YOLO ordinal party boys were like, we're gonna YOLO 33 Bitcoin on this thing and make a rune.
And I
Which
love
is
that.
kind of bullish, which is kind of bullish.
Yeah, no, if that's the case, it's super, super fucking awesome and gnarly. And like, I hope that I think the best thing to do for a project like this is to just announce the distribution schedule and
Right.
just confident about it and just stick to it and like,
Yeah.
don't let the public push you around. Because the
Right.
truth is, the public will accept anything as long as the project has confidence about it.
Yeah, and they might be just taking it. They just might need a minute to get organized about what they're doing because they didn't know they were going to win the auction. This just happened. You know what I mean? So they
So
might
my last,
be getting prepped for this drop.
totally. So the
I
other
hope.
thing I was going to say is that like that attitude is good, and I hope that's the case. I think that the thing is like I guess my last thought on this is like you don't get to being able to throw 33 Bitcoin at something unless you're super fucking good and like really, really, really good at trading and know your shit. And honestly, like I still think there's got to be a plan.
Well, they definitely made money on. I need to get the blob alpha. We should put a pin in this and like come back to it because I'm going to talk to Neuro and I'm going to get the blob alpha. I was like kind of not paying attention to blob. I don't think you were either. And then like slowly but surely blob just keeps like coming into my radar. It like, we had won't name names, but a very, very, very important investor call with like a major, major investor that owns, huge sums, huge percentages of Ordi and RSIC. I mean, this is like one of the biggest ordinals holders probably in the world who was talking about Blob, just dropped Blob to us on a conversation over the phone. And Blob, obviously, I mean, they've been slowly, we should look at the Blob chart.
Yeah.
Let's pull up the blob chart. Let's see what's going on with blob. Because I was like not paying attention to blob, and now obviously blob is a thing.
This is Blob. What's the deal with it? Do you know?
I need to get on the phone with Neuro and find out what the deal is with blob. But I know that Neuro is involved. Neuro obviously is a beloved, incredibly like loving, caring, generous. I mean, he's like he's like Sanj Famoji. He like is like just a good guy. Like he just loves. A couple days ago he was like, I mean, he is a giver to the community is what I will say about him. He is a true giver, loves ordinals. He and Elock I think, have contributed to like ordinals like code. Actually, they were like very involved with, I think, developing like markdown, making sure that markdown files could be integrated into ord. I mean, they've just done a ton of different interesting things. They had like a couple big parties at big conferences. They're community builders in San Francisco. They have a good relationship with the ordinals core team. And yeah, I mean, Neuro is the person that I have the best, the closest relationship with because he's a letters collector. But just, yeah, really solid, good guy. And then the other person that I know who's involved, I think, I don't know exactly what his role is, but Ordinali's community manager, oh my gosh, what's his name? I need to edit this out because I don't want to be known to not know his name. What is his name? Here, let me pull up the blob. Here we go.
I'm looking at the chart. I mean,
How's the chart look?
I mean, it's brand new. It's only been trading since April 6th, but I mean, it's like
I mean,
I would describe the chart as extremely bullish.
it's been rising quickly since April 6th, right?
So yeah, I mean, it's notching up. So it basically pumped super, super hard into the launch and then dumped like, I mean, it looks like half of that right away, and
Okay.
then notched up almost to its all-time high, had a mini dump, and then it just notched its all-time high. So it's like it's just like it's just grinding. I mean, what it looks like to me is a lot of people are selling it, and that
But people are
you know,
buying it too.
people are buying are the buyers are out muscling them, and it's like 350 Bitcoin for 340 Bitcoin of volume um since April 6th. It's honestly it's a lot.
I
And
mean,
it's
that's,
number one today. Do you see that?
oh, it's been number one for the past few days. I mean, that's also impressive when a collection is able to maintain that number one spot for multiple days in a row.
What's up with the art? Do you know how it works?
No.
We got to find out. Oh,
We
damn, the
should put a
art's
pin
awesome.
in this and like I need to have a conversation with Neuro about this. I need to talk to my sources about this. Somebody else mentioned this to me at a conference. I mean, it's just sort of been coming in, it's been slowly coming into my consciousness. Okay. Yeah.
So this is what I'll say really quick.
Neuro, ELOC is involved, who Neuro and ELOC work really closely together. They've done like Ordinals core, contributions together. Um, yeah, this
So the
is like
art is
this is
really
this
good.
is like the Neuro posse. This is like the Neuro posse, and I'm probably that's how Ordinali's community guy got involved too, right? Because their relationship with the core team, there's probably some relates probably somehow how they met Ordinali's community guy.
And it
Jay,
looks like it's generative art, which I think is that's like one of the art narratives that people have been speculating on, and it's honestly that have done really well in ordinals. One of the projects that I just want to call out really quickly that I really like that the fund holds a few of is Ord Rain by Lolofo. And we just like we like this like
my life,
or
it's Lifo FIFO?
Life
No.
of FIFO, yeah.
Yeah, Lifo FIFO. Okay. You love him. You're a big fan of Lifo FIFO. You like his work in general.
I do. Yeah. We hold pretty much all of his stuff. We hold Nakamoto archives, which we got pretty much for free. We hold Wizards of Ord, which we also got pretty much for free. Um, the main project that we actually bought of his was Ord Rain, and we have like six or seven of them. We have a bunch of them.
They're chill.
I actually have been buying Ord Rain since before the fund even existed. I was buying Ord Rain personally in my own portfolio, which is how I know about it.
Should we do like an update? Okay, so let's do like our inscription update. Node monks bleeding to death. I don't think that these prices will last that long because we do now have confirmation, according to Jeff from Merlin, that 90% of the Merlin has bridged back to layer one. So 90% of the node monks that were staked on Merlin chain have bridged back to layer one. So anyone who wanted to immediately dump them probably has put them on the floor already, or like, is in the process of putting them on the floor kind of thing. That being said, the floor is so crowded that these prices could crack further,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it'll last that long. So funny,
Yeah.
Farmer Joe also totally called this. He's like, I imagine we're gonna see for half a second, we'll see node monks below 0.3. That was his call.
Well, it's a little early. I mean, we'll see. I mean, we definitely, I'm not as comfortable calling a bottom on it yet. I think, I think that point 0.3 could easily break down from here when you look at how many monks are
There's
on the
so
floor.
many. Yeah, but
Um,
every time a monk goes on the floor for less than 0.3, somebody immediately scoops it.
totally.
People are
I know.
waiting for those sub 0.3s, that people are waiting to just eat up the sub 0.3s. If I had a node monk on the floor for 0.3, why not just put it on the floor for 0.298, knowing that somebody's probably going to eat it up? That'll like trigger
Because
somebody's reflex.
a lot of degens scalp hundreds of dollars at a time. I mean, to me, taking on this amount of risk to scalp $100, it's freaking crazy. But there are a lot of people that do it.
But these are people who are like getting their node monks ostensibly off of Merlin. It's been like trapped there for months. They probably put it up when node monks was at like, 0.18, 0.14. Those are some good. Why not just sell it for 0.298 if you're trying to like just flip it? What's really
Yeah,
the difference between 0.298 and 0.3? Nothing.
not much. Um,
It will, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you wanted to just get rid of it, maybe they just presume, I mean, maybe they're just like making a bet that somebody will eventually these node monks will get scooped up at these prices. It's just a matter of how many, days, hours to days they're willing to wait.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's been, yeah. I mean, the node monks. I mean, I think people are often surprised how much lower these things can go, and I think we're already in that territory for most people.
I do think that these are going to break down into the 0.2. I mean, there's no way. I mean, what is it? There's like probably 12, 13, 14, something like that, just at like 0.319 or whatever.
And like to your point, like people are buying below point 0.2, below 0.3, but we I don't think we've talked about this yet on a podcast, but the more times a low is tested, the more likely that low is to break.
Down,
So
down.
down. Well, yeah, and that goes both ways. And the corollary is also true that the more times a high is tested, the more likely the high is likely to break.
Is it
Um,
also more like severely the high or the low will break down? Like if you test something a bunch, does that also impact the severity with which a
it
breakdown or
usually
breakout?
a breakdown after a level has held is worse. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, yeah, man.
And
So
honestly, like that's what it looks like to me right now. It's just a chart of lower highs. To be totally honest, we are dipping our toe in the water at point 0.3 on this.
I mean,
Um,
like it feels like a really reasonable buy. 0.3
but
to
but
me.
it's not like a high conviction trade or anything, It's sort of just like I'm trying to be responsible in lowering our cost basis as we hit major levels, but I have no conviction that the bottom's in. I really don't.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, this could swim around in the 0.2s for a while. I mean, I wonder how many, let's just say if 90% of the Merlin unlock, let's just like assume, I mean, and also it's unclear how much of this has to do with the Merlin unlock and how much of this to do is just with the market.
Yeah. I mean, the fact, I guess, yeah.
The fact that the Merlin unlock is basically done though is good. I mean, that is like fun. At least that's like one variable that we can kind of like take off the table.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I would argue that like this trend, if you look at like the Node Monks chart going back to what is this, March 3rd, like this trend that we're in, it's like a very clear and aggressive downtrend. Like it was in effect before the Merlin unlock was even on the horizon, before anybody
Right?
was talking about it. And honestly, it's continuing after the Merlin unlock and it's not even accelerating. So it's a situation where I almost wonder if maybe the Merlin unlock was sort of baked in.
It'll be interesting to see how long. Okay, so then like let's talk about just like Bitcoin versus node monks, right? So like we have this like Bitcoin, like clearly like some of this price action and this downward price action for not just node monks, puppets, most collections, let's be real, Ordi, BRC20, all of it, right? Everything's kind of down right now. Bitcoin's in a correction. Do we have sort of like a point of view about how we see spot Bitcoin and ordinals interacting in terms of how we get out of this correction?
So um it could happen a lot of ways. So I think the most likely way that I think it could happen based on today is Bitcoin would lead the way and then ordinals would soon follow. What we've seen, and this is something you and I have talked about like in the last 2 hours, is that when Bitcoin moved just a couple days ago from 56,000 and we went back above 60K, that was not um, a positive move for Ordinals assets.
No.
In fact, Ordinals assets um, went down in Bitcoin terms in that move
Mhm.
for the most part,
Mhm.
um, which is something you pointed out.
And we've
Uh,
seen that before. I mean, that's a pattern, right? Like people basically take profits because they're denominating their profits in dollars. So when like Bitcoin has like a big move up, ordinals often go down in theory in a short-term time horizon.
totally. And then I think the other, I agree with that. And then I think the other thing that we're seeing here is like there's a bit of an assumption in the market that we're quote out of the woods from like the the retail community online because we broke back above 60 and look, chart looks like we've recovered. The reality is we may have, and that bottom at 56 might be in, um, but it also may not. And the idea that it definitely is, I would strongly disagree with that. Looking at the Bitcoin chart, I don't consider us to be quote out of the woods yet. Um, and I don't necessarily even think we're like this is such the way this asset trades. I'm not necessarily even sure we're out of the woods until we break back above 70. So the idea that this is like over, I think is not a responsible way to think about it. And I wonder if the ordinals market, which can often be more sophisticated than people think in terms of the traders who are actually moving the price. I wonder if the ordinals market is sort of in agreement with me and is just skeptical that we're out of the woods on Bitcoin.
Yeah, like maybe ordinals are like the real canary in the coal mine.
I mean, if you think about it, though, it would make a lot of sense.
Does
The
make sense.
people who are the most obsessed with Bitcoin are
True.
trading this stuff.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's totally true. And they're like, I don't know about this. I don't know about these prices. And they're getting an opportunity to take a little profit when Bitcoin goes up a little bit, right? So they're cutting. They're cutting
So
out.
that's so if you think we're going down more, or at least you view that as a high risk
We'll take
scenario,
a relief bounce, like
a
no.
little pump is a great opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, so if that's the case, so what happened? I mean, how does this, what would you, okay, so let me ask you this. What do you think we would
This
need to see? What would you want to see to feel like we were out of the woods on spot Bitcoin?
I think we need to hold above 70. So it's such a funny thing, and you don't hear it as much anymore. We used to talk about it a lot, but there's something about these 10K psychological levels in Bitcoin that if you're not above it, you're below it.
Yeah. That could be far away. I'm not like expecting to like hold a bunch above 70 for a little while. I mean, where are we now? 63 or something?
63
Yeah, I mean, it could take a while. I mean, it could be weeks before we're holding above 70.
weeks. It could, and then that's why the idea. So I have I've shared internally at our fund um a chart. It's like a trend line. And I realize that not everybody loves trend lines. I like trend lines. I think they're interesting. I think it's a good conversation to have. But that said, there's a trend line that I've been watching that goes back all the way to like July of 2019. And I do wonder if Bitcoin touches it on this move. At least from my perspective, I've been calling that sort of what I see as like the worst case scenario. Obviously, it can always be worse, but that's sort of my estimate of what the worst case scenario could be in this move. And right now, that level's around 52,000. So we didn't actually get that far from it. We were at 56.
Oh, yeah.
it really and you and I had been talking about that level before we even made the move to 56. So,
Yeah.
we've been watching that for a while. And what's interesting to me is that that 52 level, I'm looking at it from the perspective of this particular trend line, but I've been hearing a lot of, TA astrologists, if you will, talking about that level for other reasons.
Okay. Oh, really? What other reasons are they talking about that level?
I think it's like a big resistance level historically, and then I
Uh-huh.
also think it's a Fibonacci level.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Interesting. So it's possible we could be just like relief bouncing from 56 on the way back down to 52.
That's
If Bitcoin goes to 52, we could be seeing node monks at like 0.22 or something, like low 0.2s.
that's sort of, at least that's the scenario that I'm preparing for. And like to be, you had said like, how do you trade this right now? Honestly, this is one of those moments where
You have to have
this
dry
is,
powder.
yeah, it's all about the dry powder. It's about the dollars on Bitcoin if you're not fully deployed. And it's about having Bitcoin for ordinals if you're not fully deployed. And our fund, um, I can share. We hold very little cash. Um, but we do hold right now, we have quite a bit of Bitcoin dry powder.
Mhm.
Um, and, from my perspective, this is a fantastic time to be deploying. And, there's a part of me that, hopes it gets even better from here.
Yeah, like you mean even cheaper is what you mean by that.
Yeah, prices.
Yeah, because we'll just like, yeah, we can just keep buying them. There is no universe. I mean, do you think that like the bottom is in when people are like, node monks are officially dead? No one cares about node monks. The early inscription meta is not real. Like, is that the sentiment that we're supposed to be looking out for?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And like, there's not many things that make me more bullish on runes and more certain that it's not dead that everybody thinks it is right now. I mean, that's how you know it's not.
Yeah, yeah. I was in a coffee shop this morning and I was talking about runes and ordinals with a friend, and somebody sitting next to me at the coffee shop was like, "Oh yeah, I just sold all my runes." I was like, um,
Exactly. It's literally like it's the exact inverse of like the old New York joke about like the cab driver,
right,
recommending stock.
right. Whoa. If node monks go to 0.2, yeah. So then how long do you think it'll take for node monks to get to 0.9? Like, let's just like play out the bounce back scenarios. Is that something that could happen fast, or is that you think that's something that could
Way
happen
faster.
really fast?
Way faster. So I don't think we can 3x super fast because what you're seeing. And so I think that, I guess the last, like, one other point that I want to make, and you and I talk about like diamond handed people versus traders. I actually think that there's a larger contingency within ordinals and NFTs and crypto that are really just trying to do a quick flip than they try to represent themselves as. Everybody's diamond handed, right? Everybody's here because they believe in the tech. But the
Right.
actual
They love
reality is,
art. Yeah.
right, they love art. The actual reality is that most of these people that are trading this stuff are doing it because they just want to make money, and there's not a whole lot of opportunities in the real world to turn 2,000 into 5,000 in a week. And
Right.
this is one way to do that. And people are willing to take that risk because they need it. They want those opportunities. That said, I think there's a lot of people that have been looking for those flips that got trapped in both node monkeys
Mhm.
and Bitcoin shrooms are the two that I'm watching in that way. That the FOMO at the high prices was insane. So you had people buying node monks at point 0.6. I mean, a lot of them.
Mhm.
And like those people are now they've taken a 50% haircut. And part of what we have to you know I would say that some of them are dumping out of because they're distressed and they need the money, but a lot of those people are going to wait until they get back to their price to get
Mhm.
out at something that is recognizable to being break even. So that's sort of the challenge as when you go through an asset that's already dumped this hard, like getting
Right.
back through those levels is it's
It's
like we're going to
hard.
have a lot of sellers of node monks.
On the way back up, we're gonna have a lot of sellers who are just trying to like recoup losses, basically.
Yeah.
So it could be a while, but all of those monks are gonna like go into the hands of like, collectors like Brissy, right? I mean, Brissy has been publicly tweeting, now is the time to buy node monks, like get your node monks, get them now on sale. I do kind of like this wealth redistribution. Obviously, the people who put their monks on something like Merlin Chain in the first place is a very specific type of person. I'm amazed that 10% of monks were on Merlin Chain. I think that says a lot about like the type of collector, trader, whatever that was like owning those assets to begin with. What I think we're seeing now is a redistribution of monk wealth to people who probably are a little bit more diamond handed or a little bit more maybe not diamond handed, but like a little bit more, I don't want to use the word savvy. Maybe that sounds like who aren't necessarily as interested in like the quick buck, who do have the dry powder on the side, who aren't living off of $2,000 trades a week kind of thing.
Totally. No, so I think that's exactly the dynamic that is going on. And I don't necessarily even consider one to be more sophisticated than the other, in
Different.
the sense that I think the people that minted node monks, they got a great trade out of this. They're still 10x, like there's nothing to, even at these prices, they 10x'd. That is, by any standard, that is an absolute home run of a trade. Like they did incredibly well.
Right.
Um, you know, but that said, I completely agree with you. If you're buying node monks right now, the like, especially
And
on
you're
the
probably
price action,
intending to hold them until 0.9, right?
exactly, or
Yeah.
more, or like for years.
Right.
I mean, I agree with that, and that's the redistribution. And it's like, if you look at, if you're like a volatility trader, let's just say, or a momentum trader, you're not going to look at the node monks chart and be like, fuck, I'm going to flip this for 0.4 in a month. Like I would look at that and be like, shit, this might go down to 0.1.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Oh man. Node monks at 0.1. That's something.
I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just making the point that it's not a good candidate right now for a volatility trade. It's a
Right.
really good candidate though for like a long-term value like trade,
Long-term
like a
hold.
long-term hold. So it's
Right.
like I think it's really just I think that what you're seeing right now is you're seeing like a trade between people that have like a much shorter time preference to people that have a much longer time preference. And I think you're seeing that in node monks and shrooms.
Yep. And you would imagine for like, and the definition of long term here would basically be like this cycle, like a full cycle.
Yes.
Right. Um, oh man. Any other inscriptions collections that we want to cover? Shrooms? Should we
I
talk
mean, I
about?
want to talk about the shrooms thing. So I think that a few hours ago, Shroomtoshi announced that he's stepping away. It looks like he might have already even um, deactivated the Twitter account. And like that's it for Shroomtoshi. Like the shrooms have been
I love it.
distributed, and I think that we're probably likely to never hear from him again.
I love
Um,
it. I'm so
so
bullish. It's so bullish to me.
yeah,
Yeah,
what do you
I'm like,
think about it?
I love it. I love it. Like I'm like, he just Satoshi Nakamoto this thing. He dropped the grailiest of grail collection. He distributed the shrooms. There's 200 of them. They are the first original collection of ordinals ever. And now he's like, this is about the asset. This is not about me as like a weird project founder, which I think Ethereum people are more used to. But the reality of the situation is you and I think, are on the same page. Like we're much more bullish on like commodity style assets where the assets are valuable in and of themselves. It has nothing to do with some weird like key man, like community driven anything. It's just like the assets themselves have consensus related value based on, history or whatever it is. And there's no risk associated with some sort of like utility, weird project management thing. Like to me, like weird project management stuff is like a bug, not a feature. And
Totally.
so him making the decision that shrooms are going to be a historical commodity style asset and that he is piecing out and he doesn't want his character getting in the way or influencing the price at all is incredibly bullish. From my perspective, I think that Raktoshi should have done that. I think that, I mean, I think Raktoshi probably would be in his best interest to do something similar yeah. And yeah, node Toshi, if you will, probably be in their best interest to do something similar. Um, I think that it's a strong move. That's sort of my perspective about it. I think it's funny that people are like getting upset about it. I think it like speaks to this like, you know, a misunderstanding about Bitcoin versus like how collections on Ethereum work.
Totally. And I think it harkens back to like what I think was like an incorrect assumption about these markets to begin with, um, which is the idea that um, like that the project founder should even play a role after the fact, and that there's like utility waiting around the corner for these assets, when the reality is being upfront about the fact that there is no utility. That's the best thing you can possibly do, because it's honest, and it's the only thing that's honest.
And I think that this is why meme coins in general will outperform this cycle, right? Is because I think that people are getting fatigued of the utility narrative. I think the utility narrative is going to underperform this cycle because people, I mean, Casey mentioned this in his podcast, and he did a really, really good job of sort of explaining that sort of his point of view is that these utility narratives are used as rationalizations to pay out dev teams and venture capitalists. Basically, that is the point of these utility narratives. They rationalize extraction out of the project to VCs and project leaders. And why would I don't understand why retail is excited about that. It's like retail like got duped into this like marketing ploy that utility is good for a project when actually it takes money out of retail's pocket. And like the meme coins are much, much more honest way for retail to actually be making cleaner bets on, you know, these speculative plays, is sort of my point of view. Yeah.
I 100% agree. And I think it's like, it's less malicious, it's less cynical, it's
Yeah.
less like
It's
everything
honest.
about it is just more honest, and like it makes me way more comfortable as like an as a longtime Bitcoin maximalist who's always felt a little awkward around some of these assets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, yeah.
I could have made the calculation that it's like, well, I can get something for these assets. I might as well like just sell them now. And like that's sort of like the trap, is you just don't know.
And R6 was sort of the beginning of the airdrop renaissance a little bit. Like, I feel like I remember when R6 dropped, and that was like the first time I think I'd ever been airdropped anything in my life. Like, I was like, what is this thing that just showed up in my wallet? Now it's like I'm looking for them. Now it's like I wake up every morning to see like what airdrops I got that maybe I can sell or maybe I shouldn't.
Totally.
The other thing is like a lot of these airdrops are so cheap that it just doesn't make sense to sell them because it's like the value of the airdrop is less than the value of the transaction fees. That's like another element to this. Like some of these airdrops, like I have a bag of airdrops in my wallet that are like basically just like worth nothing because even just selling them would be expensive and annoying.
Totally.
They're just
Yeah.
a liquid. They're just a liquid, basically. Yeah.
And a lot, and the sad thing is for most of those teams that drop these inscription prunes, I mean, it was a total loss for them. They're never gonna, it's like there's never gonna be a rune. It's just
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, I guess like this is sort of like an unusual, and that maybe is something that's like an edge for the fund a little bit, is like we have like a broader, diverse range of airdrops that we get. So we have a better batting average when it comes to the airdrops that like hit it out of the park, you know, and we just always are gonna have a better batting average than like an individual collector, probably.
that's true. No, it's and that is definitely the case.
Yeah. There are certain, I mean, what something that's very clear, and this came up with Game of Blocks, right? Like there is definitely certain parts of this game advantage the biggest holders, basically.
Totally.
So yeah. Word. Okay. Well, so anything else that we want to cover today? We talked about Epic. We talked about, I mean, is that what's going on with the Sats market right now? Anything? Uncommons, they're kind of just flat. Everything's down, right? I mean, nothing's really like doing great right now. We're kind of in this acquisition. It's really just accumulation time.
I mean, uncommons are very close to their break even hunting price. They're at $73. They're very low. they've maintained that pretty consistently. Um,
There's no
but
reason
like
for them to go that
we've
much
tested
lower.
that so many times, like I'm starting to wonder if we are going to break through 70 on this.
Interesting. I mean, the only reason that we would break through 70 is if like people needed liquidity to, maybe somebody's like, oh, I might as well just sell these at a loss so that I can buy a node monks at 0.25.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Not the worst
We're
trade in the
not we're not going to do that, but
We're
I
not
could.
gonna do that, yeah. But we have dry powder. We don't need to sell uncommons to like get node monks at 0.25 or whatever.
Yeah, no, we have dry powder from taking profit on um some BRC20 trades. But
And
we
we
also
also,
have dry powder because we just raised some money.
yeah, exactly. Yay.
Good job, Isabel.
Oh my God, good job to the whole, yeah, good job team. Um, awesome. Any other fund updates?
No, I mean, April, like, I guess then we can decide if we want to keep this in later, but April was, that was the first like significant down month for Bitcoin and for our fund since the fund was formed.
We actually outperformed Bitcoin on the way down, which was fucking crazy. I mean, I was not
Substantially,
expecting
yeah.
that. I was not expecting that. I mean, the thesis has been we'll, outperform Bitcoin on the way up and, we'll probably take losses on the way down relative to Bitcoin. Ordinals is a leveraged play on Bitcoin. So the fact that we were able to outperform Bitcoin on the way down is like insanely amazing.
By a lot too. So it was a really so April was a down month for us, but it was we were down. Um, our initial estimates are that we were down less than 10% in a month where Bitcoin was down more than 15. So it was for us, I think it was what we were hoping for in terms of our first down month. We've been trading pretty aggressively around our position, specifically the BRC20s. I think that was a big part of it. And then I think also, I think runes, the fact that we it hasn't done well, but we've been able to add some pretty substantial value to our portfolio at such a low cost basis that it is good performance.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm like, oh, so bullish. Yeah, we're gonna have our website up soon. We've got some like, yeah, I'm super excited for Unbroken Chain.
Me too. Things are going awesome.
Yeah, super amazing. It's gonna be it's like already shaping up to be such an incredible year. Cool. Okay, awesome. Anything else that we want to share?
No, it was a really fun podcast. I really enjoyed that.
All right, cool.